The table looked beautiful under the soft glow of the patio lanterns. I had arranged each detail with care. Tiny glass votives flickering between sprigs of fresh rosemary, linen napkins folded just so, and our wedding china, which we hadn't used in years. The smell of seared duck and lemon risotto hung in the warm New Mexico air. It was supposed to be special. Our 8th anniversary and Marco's birthday. 2 birds, 1 elegant, candlelit evening. I'd spent the whole afternoon planning it, even made creme brulee, which I hadn't done since culinary school, back when I thought I'd open my own cafe someday. I looked at the clock on my phone. 7:42 p.m. No text, no call. I stepped back into the kitchen and checked the oven again, even though everything was already warm and ready. Then I went to the hallway mirror and fixed a stray hair, retouched my lipstick. Maybe he just got stuck at work. Maybe he wanted to surprise me. By 8:15, the candles had burned down a little. I lit new ones and poured myself a glass of wine. I tried not to think too much. Marco had said this week would be busy. He was finalizing that museum contract in Albuquerque. I told myself not to assume the worst. At 9:06, I called. No answer. Straight to voicemail. I called again at 9:20. Left a message this time. Hey, just checking in. Hope everything's okay. Dinner's ready whenever you are. At 9:50, I gave up and sat down outside by myself, sipping wine and watching a moth bang into the lantern nearest the door. At 10:30, my phone buzzed. Finally. Marco. Sorry. Business emergency. Don't wait up. That was it. 2 sentences. No apology, no explanation, not even a fake emoji. I stared at the screen, reading it twice, like maybe I had missed something. But there it was. Don't wait up. As if I hadn't spent the last 6 hours making sure everything was perfect. I stood slowly, pressing my hands against the table to steady myself. My knees felt weird, like they didn't want to hold me. Then I started blowing out the candles, one by one. I packed everything away in silence. No tears, no yelling, just quiet. Inside, the fridge door clicked softly as I stacked the leftovers. The creme brulee never even made it to the table. By the time I turned out the lights, the house was still and dark, and something inside me had gone very still too. Not anger, not yet. Just a quiet, heavy kind of numbness that made it hard to breathe, like I had suddenly realized something I couldn't unknow. The next morning, Marco still hadn't called. I woke up early, like always, and went through the motions, coffee, shower, feeding the cat. Except none of it felt normal. My hands were clumsy. I poured cream into my coffee and just watched it swirl like smoke, forgetting to stir. I kept looking at my phone, expecting something. An apology, an excuse. A sign that maybe last night wasn't what it felt like. By the time I got to the museum, my heart felt like it was thudding behind my ribs instead of inside them. I'd barely put down my bag when I walked straight to the staff kitchen and pulled out my phone. I stared at Marco's contact. Then I hit call. Voicemail again. I sat at my desk and tried to focus on the exhibit paperwork in front of me, but the words kept blurring. I read the same paragraph 5 times before I gave up and stood. I didn't even tell anyone where I was going. I just grabbed my purse and stepped outside, walking down the sidewalk in the bright Santa Fe sun with a mission I couldn't quite explain to myself. I called the office where Marco worked, the architecture firm on Alameda Street. He'd been there for 5 years. I knew their number by heart. The receptionist answered, cheerful and chipper. Good morning, Sanchez and Powell Design. This is Tara. Hi, this is Elena. I'm trying to reach Marco Ortiz. I'm his wife. There was a pause. Then, let me check. Muffled typing. A longer pause this time. Then she came back. Her voice was careful now, softer. I'm so sorry, but Marco actually left the firm earlier this week. He resigned 3 days ago. I blinked. What? Yeah, I thought you'd know. I assumed he gave notice. No, he didn't. Did he leave any contact info? A forwarding email? I'm really sorry, number, it was kind of sudden. My breath caught. I managed a tight thank you and hung up. 3 days ago, I drove straight home. I don't even remember making the turns, just that my hands were shaking on the wheel. When I got to the house, everything was quiet. But his car was in the driveway. The moment I unlocked the front door, I could hear drawers opening. Movement upstairs. I dropped my purse and walked slowly down the hall, heart pounding harder with each step. Marco was in the bedroom, standing in front of an open suitcase on the bed. He didn't look startled, just tired, like he had been waiting for this. "What are you doing?" I asked. He didn't answer at first, just zipped the side pocket of the suitcase and pulled a folder off the dresser. When he handed it to me, I didn't need to open it. I knew what it was. Divorce papers, his signature already scrawled across the bottom line. My voice came out low. "You quit your job without telling me. You ghosted me on our anniversary. And now you're leaving?" Marco met my eyes for maybe half a second before looking away. I didn't want to fight about it. I wanted to say 100 things, to scream or cry or collapse. But instead, I just stood there, holding the papers like they were someone else's problem. Something inside me had cracked last night. Now it was starting to splinter. Marco didn't slow down. He kept folding shirts, rolling socks, neatly lining up shoes along the inside edge of the suitcase, like he had all the time in the world. Like I wasn't standing there, watching the life we built unravel in real time. "You're really doing this," I said. Just like that. He didn't look up. "It's been coming for a long time." "Since when?" My voice cracked, but I didn't care. "Since yesterday? Or since you secretly quit your job and decided not to tell your wife?" He let out a breath like I was being difficult. "You wouldn't get it, Elena. You never listen." I blinked. "I never listen. I made you dinner last night. I hung lanterns. I cooked for 6 hours. That was our anniversary." He finally turned, arms crossed. "And why did you do it, huh? To pretend like everything's fine, like you're some perfect wife? You're not. You're too busy with your little museum projects and obsessing over the house and schedules and... God, do you even hear yourself half the time?" I stared at him. "You're mad that I take care of things." He stepped closer. "I'm mad that you don't take care of me." That stopped me cold. He kept going. "You've been married to the laundry, the cleaning, your job. You don't even see me anymore. When was the last time you asked how I was? When was the last time you looked at me and saw a man instead of a task to manage?" I felt like he had punched the air out of me. "So this is my fault?" He shrugged. "You made it easy." I shook my head slowly. You made yourself small and distant and angry. You left work and didn't tell me. You lied. You disappeared last night without so much as a phone call. I begged you to talk to me for months. I didn't want to talk. I wanted to feel like I mattered. I reached out instinctively, touching the edge of his sleeve. "We could still fix this. Marco, if you'd just..." He pulled away like my fingers burned him. "I'm moving to Phoenix." I blinked. "What?" "I've got a new job. It starts Monday. I'm going. I signed the lease last week." I just stood there, my mouth open but no words coming out. "Phoenix?" He grabbed the suitcase and wheeled it toward the door. "I'll have someone come for the rest of my things. You can keep the house." I told the landlord I was off the lease. My breath caught. "You what?" He turned in the doorway. "Lease ends in 30 days. You'll figure it out." Then he was gone. The front door closed with a final dull click. I didn't move, not for minutes, maybe longer. I sank slowly to the floor, the divorce papers still in my hand, my back against the dresser. The house was silent except for the low hum of the fridge and the soft rustle of wind through the trees outside. I thought of the dinner I had packed away in Tupperware, the creme brulee still untouched in the fridge. I pressed the folder to my chest and let the silence swallow me whole. A few days later, I found the reunion invitation in a stack of unopened mail on the kitchen counter. It was printed on thick cream cardstock, with a little grapevine design curling across the top. Santa Fe High School, class of 2007. 20-year reunion at Los Encinos Vineyard. I almost tossed it, but I didn't. That Saturday, I stood in front of the mirror trying to decide if I even looked like someone who belonged at a vineyard reunion. My dress was simple, a soft navy that didn't draw attention, but didn't scream sadness either. I ran my fingers under my eyes one last time, checking for the puffiness that had refused to go away all week. Close enough. When I pulled into the gravel lot, the sun had just dipped behind the mountains. The vineyard was quiet, warm light spilling out of the big barn-turned event space, laughter drifting through the open doors. I almost turned around. Then I saw Daniel. He was standing just off the patio, holding a drink, wearing a plain button-up shirt and jeans. His hair was grayer than I remembered, and he looked a little more tired, but his eyes were kind. "Hey, stranger," he said when I walked up. "Daniel?" I asked, surprised at the softness in his voice. Still me, just slightly older and slightly more boring. I smiled for the first time in what felt like weeks. "You were never boring," he laughed. "Don't tell my teenager that." We stood by the railing and talked for a while. Not about the reunion or high school or how many people had changed, but about real things. His wife had passed away 2 years ago. Cancer. He said it like a plain fact. Not trying to make it dramatic, just truthful. He didn't ask about Marco. Maybe he'd heard, maybe he hadn't, but he didn't dig. He just let me talk when I was ready. I told him pieces. Enough to feel human again. "Grief doesn't always look like a funeral," he said at one point. "Sometimes it's just walking through a room that used to feel full." I nodded, swallowing a lump that had nothing to do with wine. Later, he walked me to my car. The air smelled like grapes and cooling earth. I looked up at the stars. The sky in Santa Fe always made room for stillness. "Thanks for tonight," I said, unlocking my door. "Anytime," he said. "Don't be a stranger, okay?" I watched him walk away, his silhouette folding into the shadows of the vineyard. Driving home under the moonlight, I realized something had shifted. Not dramatically, just a small warm flicker in my chest. I wasn't okay, not yet. But I wasn't broken either. I was still here. And maybe, just maybe, that meant something. A week later, Marco called. I was folding laundry in the living room when his name lit up my phone screen. I stared at it for a second, thumb hovering over the green button. Then I answered. "Elena," he said, like he'd just bumped into me at a grocery store. "What do you want?" He sighed. "I thought you'd want to hear it from me." "Hear what?" There was a pause, just long enough to be theatrical. "I got remarried." I blinked. "What?" "Yeah. Sabrina and I had a small ceremony here in Phoenix. Just the two of us and her family." My stomach flipped. "You've known her for what, 2 months?" "It's been longer than that. We kept it quiet." His voice had that rehearsed calm he always used when he was proud of something but wanted it to sound casual. "Who is she?" He cleared his throat. "She owns that gallery downtown. Sabrina Holtzman. Her family's in real estate." "It's been good for my career." I said nothing. "And she's pregnant," he added, like he was dropping the grand finale. "We're expecting in January. Can you believe it?" I stood there frozen, a half-folded towel in my hands. "Elena?" he prompted. I swallowed hard. "Is this supposed to make me feel something?" "I just thought you'd want to know, since we were together for a long time." I leaned against the kitchen counter, pressing my free hand to the cool tile. "Congratulations," I said flatly. He laughed, like he thought I might be joking. "Well, anyway, I hope you're doing okay." I didn't respond. I ended the call. 10 minutes later, curiosity got the best of me. I looked her up. Sabrina Holtzman. The name sounded familiar. When I saw her photo, everything snapped into place. She was Sabrina Engel back in high school. 2 grades below me. Awkward, painfully shy. She used to eat lunch by herself under the library awning. I remembered her braces and her oversized sweaters. Her last name had changed. Her face sculpted now by surgeries and good lighting, but I recognized the eyes. She had erased herself to become someone else. And Marco had fallen for the illusion. I stared at her Instagram. Photos of minimalist interiors, cold white walls, and her glowing beside Marco at gallery openings. He left me for a mirage, for a carefully engineered version of success and image and status. I didn't feel jealous. That surprised me. What I felt was something closer to pity. He had always chased perfection, or at least the illusion of it. Now he'd finally found someone who looked perfect on paper, and he'd discarded me like a faded receipt, not because I failed him, but because I reminded him of who he really was. I closed the app, tossed my phone onto the couch, and stood by the window for a long time, staring out at the quiet street. For the first time since he left, I didn't feel like the broken one. I felt free. It was nearly 4 months later when Marco called again. This time, his voice was tight. No fake cheer, no smugness. Just strained silence on the other end before he finally spoke. "There's something wrong with the baby," he said. I didn't respond right away. I was standing in the museum's herb garden, pruning lavender with garden gloves still on. His voice felt like a sour wind through the phone. Sabrina had the baby last week, he went on. It was a girl, but… He trailed off. But what? I asked. He sighed. She doesn't look like me. Or her. I mean, she's healthy, but something's off. Sabrina hasn't even held her yet. She just lies in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling. I stayed quiet. I don't know what to do, he admitted. Sabrina's mother keeps saying to get a paternity test, but Sabrina refuses. Says it's insulting. There was a pause. I thought you'd understand, he said. You were always good with people. With emotions, I almost laughed. You want comfort from me now? No, I just… His voice caught. I don't know who to talk to. Everyone's treating me like I should just be grateful, but I keep looking at this baby and feeling like a fraud. I leaned against the wall of the garden shed, eyes closed. Maybe because you are. That's not fair, he muttered. No, I said. You left your marriage without warning. You signed divorce papers like it was a cable contract. You married a woman you barely knew because she had the right connections. You chased image, and now you're shocked that it's not real? Silence. You know what this sounds like, Marco, I continued. You're panicking because the life you built on appearance and status is starting to show cracks. You can't Photoshop a baby. You can't control DNA. And you definitely can't control the guilt that comes from trying to erase who you were. Elena, no, I cut in. You don't get to ask for comfort from the person you discarded. Not when your world starts collapsing. He let out a shaky breath. So what, you want me to just suck it up and deal with it? No, I said. I want you to grow up. Start being a father instead of a man obsessed with optics. That baby doesn't care who you pretended to be. She just needs someone who won't vanish the moment things stop looking perfect. Another long silence. Then, in a whisper, I'm scared. You should be, I said gently. But not for your reputation, for your daughter. She's the one who matters now, not your ego. I hung up. And for the rest of the day, the scent of lavender clung to my hands. It stayed with me through lunch, through the quiet drive home, through the evening breeze on my balcony. It smelled like something new growing, something honest. Almost a year had passed. I lived in a small sunlit cottage now, just a 15-minute walk from the museum. It had a balcony that caught the afternoon light, and I filled it with pots of thyme, mint, rosemary, and cherry tomatoes that were finally starting to turn red. The old house, the one Marco and I shared, was a memory I didn't think about much anymore. The lease had run out, and I let it go without fanfare. Just a quiet goodbye, the same way he left me. I worked part-time now, just mornings at the museum. I spent afternoons reading or taking long walks through the plaza, stopping at my favorite bakery for a single croissant and a small coffee. I'd started a pottery class on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Nothing fancy. I was still terrible at centering clay, but I loved the feeling of my hands moving through something soft and shapeless, slowly forming into something solid. Daniel and I saw each other sometimes. Not often, just enough. Sometimes we'd meet for lunch or take a short drive to a trail we used to hike back in high school. He was still kind, still steady in a way that didn't ask anything from me. There was no rush, just two people who had both known loss and were learning how to breathe again. One afternoon, over lemon scones and weak iced tea, Daniel asked, "Do you ever hear from him?" "Marco," I said, wiping crumbs from my thumb. "Not in months," Daniel raised an eyebrow. "And are you okay with that?" I smiled. "More than okay." He nodded and didn't press. That was the thing I liked most about him. No need to fill the silence. The gossip drifted in slowly, like it always does in small towns. Marco's marriage was falling apart. He had cheated, again, apparently. Sabrina had taken the baby and moved in with her sister. There were rumors of legal battles and therapy sessions and quiet settlements behind closed gallery doors. And their daughter, the one Marco was once so ashamed of, was being picked on at preschool. A couple of parents recognized Sabrina from her old life, before the surgeries, before the wealth. Someone had found pictures online. Kids can be cruel, so can adults. I didn't feel anything sharp when I heard it. No bitterness, no triumph, just a kind of quiet certainty, like watching a tree finally fall after years of rot inside. That life, his life, had been built on surfaces, and surfaces always crack. Mine was built slowly, quietly, with clay and rosemary, and Tuesday evenings spent shaping bowls that were slightly lopsided, but wholly mine. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't perfect, but it was real. And for the first time in a long, long time, I was too. It was one of those golden autumn evenings, where the light made everything feel softer than it was. The sky above Santa Fe had that burnt orange glow, and the cottonwoods lining the sidewalk rattled gently in the breeze, like old bones with secrets. I walked through the park with a warm croissant in hand, still slightly flaking, the bag crumpled under my arm. A group of kids were playing near the fountain. Their laughter drifted across the brick paths and melted into the hush of falling leaves. I sat on a bench not far from them and tore off a small piece of pastry, chewing slowly, letting the quiet settle around me like a favorite sweater. I wasn't thinking of Marco. Not in the way I used to. Not with that ache in my chest or the knot in my stomach. What I felt now was more like distance, like I had turned a corner and the road behind me had simply disappeared into fog. He hadn't called since the last time. No more breathless confessions or hollow apologies. I imagined he was too busy sorting through whatever was left of the image he'd tried so hard to protect. And I was no longer the woman who planned anniversary dinners hoping for scraps of affection. I was the woman who could shape a crooked bowl from a lump of clay and still call it beautiful. The woman who tended herbs not for someone else's meals, but for her own quiet joy. The woman who let someone like Daniel into her life without needing it to mean anything more than comfort and warmth and presence. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need answers. I didn't even need closure. What I had now was enough. I finished the croissant and wiped my hands on a napkin, smiling as I watched the children run toward the trees. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked and someone strummed a guitar out of tune. The world kept going. So did I. And for the first time in years, I wasn't chasing anything. I was just here, whole, quiet, free.